defense infrastructure and installations and our way of looking at things. And you mentioned General the China angle and the other angles. Well, there are a lot of adversaries out there, and in the cyber world, it is said that we're just beginning to both realize our potentials as well as the threats. So, in terms of threats, we have looked at it how, but the question here is, how are we moving ahead to tackle these threats, and where do we stand?
Of course, the principle, the theory, and everything is well known to everybody. We do have defensive measures. And in theory, you can say you can predict, you can prevent, you can identify, and then you can respond to these threats. But practically, it doesn't happen this way. Now, when you think of China, which is combining cyber war, electronic warfare, information warfare, command and control, and all these aspects into one strategic support system, they have made a lot of progress, because after the Kosovo campaign, they realized that information warfare, digitization is going to play a big role. Now look what they have done. They have their own operating system. They don't allow Google in their country. They have the Baidu search engine, their own. They have control over a number of major domains. You know, these .com and .org and .net. There are 13 of such high-level domains, they are called. India doesn't own any of them. Even .in and .co.in are subdomains, are considered subdomains. USA, Japan, China, and some others have got their own full control over it. So imagine .com, .net or something being shut down one day. Internet is a weapon. China has realized this. And the Chinese, as you saw, most of their major weapon systems have been developed based on industrial espionage. They find it difficult to target the government labs and government agencies, so what they do is they target the supply chain, the manufacturers in the civil side, who are a bit lax with the cyber guidelines and protection. And most of these, they've developed an anti-tank guided missile which is similar to the American Javelin. They've developed the Rainbow armed UAV which is similar to the MQ-1 Reaper. They have developed the J-20 stealth fighter, which is similar, which has got many features of F-22 Raptor and F-35. And a whole lot of such equipment, platforms, weapons they have developed by espionage. You know, the world over, there has been a warning against Huawei and about ZTE. ZTE is supposed to be owned by the PLA. And they have a law that all Chinese companies operating abroad or in China, when they come across information which is of national security interest to them, they have to share it with the Chinese government. They've used subterfuge, blackmail, and a whole lot of things to get sensitive and defense-related information. And they have a very large capacity to launch offensive cyber war. Dedicated units, 13 or 14 dedicated units. India is not one of their main targets. But one of these units is against India, and a number of other countries grouped together.
So that's the level out there. As
also
look at the adversaries.
How much we depend on. Now we are talking about 5G coming in. Can you imagine by 2025, it is predicted that between 5 billion and 25 billion, depending on whose assessment you go by, there will be those many 5G devices. Once 5G with Chinese technologies proliferates, and around the networks, the ecosystem is developed, you cannot do without it. And these 5G devices are not going to be just smartphones. They already have, today you have cameras, video cameras, they will have night vision cameras, they will have cognitive software,
features
they will be used with weapons, they will have such good broadband width, they will have high-speed internet, they will be able to use armed UAVs with the 5G, and they are going to become a big threat. Have we done anything about it? Not so far. Well, I hope the Defense Cyber Agency is seized of it, because they are taking baby steps. soon they will be a full-fledged cyber agency, and I hope they will address these issues.
Okay, Jan Saxena, from your viewpoint, agencies like defense cyber agencies, and looking at the level of these threats and the way technology is developing with every passing moment, the scenarios which Jan Narada pointed out, and earlier you also said. So, how do you see things moving ahead in future for India and for agencies like DCA, the Defense Cyber Agency, for them to adapt themselves or become very, very important in terms of defensive mechanism as well as offensive mechanism?
Okay, I'll put things in the perspective. Let us start from year 2000, when the Information Technology IT Act came out. It was revised in 2008, and thereafter the National Electronics Policy came out in 2012, and the National Cyber Security Policy came out in 2013. Now, all these policies dealt with the parts of cyber security, means cyber defense at all times. It was realized that one portion, while cyber security is being built, as Sir just brought about in our country also, but what was the main thing which was missing is to build a credible cyber deterrence. What is meant by credible cyber deterrence is to build such offensive and defensive capability that the enemy or your adversary is convinced of not launching a cyber attack because the cost of retaliation will be prohibitive and unacceptable. In this field, very seminal work has been done by Vivekananda International Foundation, in which they had a task force. That task force report on credible cyber deterrence in the armed forces of India was presented, and one of the major recommendations was the establishment of the Defense Cyber Agency, which you see in reality today. It talks about something else. It talks about the creation of cyber power. What is cyber power? Cyber power is the capability and the ability to use the digital space not only for your defense, but also to manipulate the cyber space in a fashion which is advantageous to you, whether it is surveillance, whether it is exploitation, whether it is coercion, whether it is any act of attack or defense, it has to be built. Now that cyber power is not only just in theory. The whole structure of Defense Cyber Agency was laid out in terms of 7 pillars of, they're called 7 pillars of capacity building of cyber power. Now it is very, very important to understand those 7 pillars, because it is where the Indian response is anchored on that, because it is the cyber security report which anchored on that. The first of that is the policy and strategy. Of course, everybody has a policy and a strategy. Thereafter, the doctrine for cyber power. Thereafter, the organizational support which must come for this cyber power. In addition to that, what are the human resource requirements? How do we require to build the cyber warriors and cyber leaders? Sir talked about the Chinese hacker army. How do we build our cyber warriors, cyber leader, perception managers? How do we carry out training in India and abroad and for others? As also, how do we carry out integration of various concepts which have been developed? How do we do the international interface for cyber diplomacy? How do we build a legal framework, a robust legal framework, that whenever we take the cyber attack or defense action, we are protected internationally, legally, and fully by the law. Those are the 7 pillars. Now, Indian response is anchored on these 7, and the task force report is under implementation, and you already see the first step. So there is one more important point before I just sum up. Sir, there was a very important Homeland Security Conference in August 2019, in which in July the government has cyber security in the crime area. They have established a national cyber crime coordination center. Now what does it do? It has a seven different elements. It first of all analyzes what the threat is, thereafter investigates, thereafter the forensics which depend on that, and thereafter the response. So that the response both on the crime side and the response today of the Indian forces is to build the cyber power.
So basically they will have to, work in coordination with each other. Sudhi, from your perspective, how do you see things moving from here onwards, and the kind of infrastructure which we have? How do we have to build on that, build on our capabilities to ensure that we are able to go ahead and tackle all those challenges?
Well, I would say it's a mixed bag. While there is a lot of awareness that is there within the government, but as governments function, and more so, in the system that we function, it's quite disparate. There needs to be a lot more focus. In particular, who do you employ, or who do you get in to do either your cyber defenses or your cyber offenses? Most of these things are being done by 20-year-olds. They are not done by people, who have been trained, regimented in a certain way. Now, you need to make that shift. But are you making that shift? Even if in the Defense Cyber Agency, I mean, it is a very welcome step. The Cabinet cleared it last year. It's been, it's taking baby steps, as General Arora was putting it out. But you need to think differently. You cannot think in the old ways that, well, I'm going to, bring in 10 men from my, from the signals or from X, Y, and Z, train them. No, you cannot. Because if you look world over, they are being done by different kind of people.
So you need to improvise.
You need to improvise. Are we doing it? We are, but are we doing it enough? That's the question mark.
Okay. So we need to improvise and also ensure that we build on our capabilities. As our panelists have pointed out,